All right, I started back up. So that was the bare basics of, darn, I wish I had this in the first part, because we did this, and then I had this other slide, which I wasn't going to walk through it all, but basically here is a cheat sheet of when things go wrong, like where to go and what to do. It's troubleshooting is, no matter how good you are, it's a nebulous topic, and it's always different depending on what you're working on. So there's no one right way to start, but there are some basic things to do, and one is to make sure your actual program's running. Exit out of it, restart the computer, and then try to pinpoint down. Oh, actually, you know what? I had one more I wanted to demonstrate. Was in sight. Let's keep with this one, and let's say after we send Control V, and we'll do it before we even go to Excel. So this is how, if I was troubleshooting and I wasn't sure if what was in my clipboard, right? I might put a return here just so it doesn't keep going, and then here I'm going to put in a message box, and you can put in a %, which now means everything after this is an expression, and I'm going to say show me the clipboard, right? So now when I highlight something and hit Control B, it'll show me what's in the clipboard. Right? And so if you were storing something in a variable, it's a great, easy way to use a message box in your script to see what content is actually on your clipboard and test it. And that's the biggest one often is that what you actually think is stored in that variable isn't what you were expecting it to be. And then it's, of course, figuring out why that is.
Yeah, that would be the next part. And of course, something like Zeddy has these debugging tools as well,
Yes.
But it might be a little too advanced, where the message box is pretty easy to implement. You simply go in and where the thing that you're expecting to happen isn't happening the correct way, put in the message box, check a few things. It will also halt the script execution at that point. So that would also make it easier for you to maybe check all of your variables with the built-in ways of checking what variables are holding which data and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I listed on the debug page. I think I mentioned the list vars, which is somewhere in here. It's a good one to be able, because you can display all the variables. The other one, which is great, is you can double click on the running icon and see what happened last, and you can also say view variables and their contents. And if I had a variable, it would show you, what was stored in it. And so it's amazing to me how many people I'll work with AutoHotkey and they don't realize that this is there. And it's one of those, I didn't know it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not putting anybody down. I didn't know it was there forever. And then I finally realized, I'm like, holy cow, that it's so easy for me to take a quick look at well, what's actually in my stuff, right?
And you can also, if your script isn't continually running, you can also, on the first page where it's showing the last run lines, kind of get an idea of how the flow was just before you actually ended up where you were. Yeah.
But back to Jackie's original point, what I'll often do is I'll put a message box here and I'll say I'll describe it, switching to Excel. And then I'll put one down here that says activated Excel. And then I'll put one beneath that and said, pre-paging, not paging, but going, moving down one cell. So you write in the message box a descriptive of where you think you are. And that way, as it's going through, you can see if oh, well, wait a minute. Often I'll be doing something and either it's in a function or a loop. And I put it in here, and the script is supposed to be going over it, and it never even pops up. And it's like, well, crap, I'm not even getting into this loop that I thought I was getting into, right? The problem isn't with my loop. The problem is getting into it, right? But message boxes are absolutely, there's so many great things. Studio has an amazing debugging interface as well, and Sight does as well. But 95% of the time, I'm using message boxes. It's just, they're easy.
Yeah, they're easy, and you can grasp it very quickly because you control exactly where it is. So at the place where you are a doubt of what's actually happening, just as the one you just told us about, where the flow of the script isn't actually going the way that you had expected, and that could be an if. checking one of your variables, and if that variable really doesn't hold a number or whatever you're checking with the if, that block will be skipped entirely. So the reason that stuff in it isn't actually happening isn't because the script isn't working, but it's because your variable is not having the content that you expect.
Yeah.
And the message box will pretty quickly give you an idea of where to look next. Yeah.
So that I think covers the basics of hot strings, hotkeys, and a little bit of example of how you can copy and paste for, there's so many things you can do. But does anybody have any specific questions or something they've tried to do or have had issues with that they want to try to either talk through, or do you want some other examples of certain things or anything? I mean, we're happy to, field specific questions or talk through some other things that just talking about the capabilities of what you can do with AutoHotkey. It really is, I don't want to say endless, but it's close to it, like the amount of stuff you can automate. And speaking, just because I see Jean's picture here, Jean Lalonde has a great tool called Quick Access Pop-Up, which I think most people have probably heard of that are on this call. But it's a great one if you're not into actual coding yourself. It does a lot of the hotkeys. It has the hot strings built into it as well, with a GUI interface, so it's really easy to use. I would definitely say, like, if this is beyond you, that one it's very user friendly and easy to use.
Yeah, I'd say that I've seen each time someone comes in and says, you can't use a hotkey for that. Someone has at one point made an example of doing it anyway, and still, one example I had was making an HTML server with a web server without a hotkey. Someone actually did it. It's not a great server, but it could be used for it, and that's the point. To what we were talking about at the very beginning, maybe even before the recording, is that AutoHotkey isn't the tool to end all tools, but it is a great tool if you learn parts of it, and if you keep on extending your knowledge, you can do most of what you would expect to be able to do on Windows. And that's the final end of what AutoHotkey kind of the limit is. If you want to do something on a phone, on the internet, on a Macintosh, whatever it might be, you'll not be able to do everything with AutoHotkey. But if you just want to automate stuff that you do on Windows, there is a limit, but it's pretty far out there.
So John mentioned creating a GUI as an example. Thanks, John, because GUIs are my weakness, but I know Jackie can do it in a heartbeat. But the one thing actually I was going to say was, and unfortunately, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not. Let me see, because I might have added it. So this, by the way, is the quick access pop-up. And so I put a lot of my AutoHotkey code into here. But here we go, my message. So unfortunately, that's just the function to it. Darn. Because it's in my library. I was going to say, because it creates a nice GUI for the text, and I can easily change the dimensions of it. But Jackie, do you want to demonstrate, like, creating I can just give either on your computer or I can give you control of mine.
Yeah, it's fair enough if you just give me control of where you're already at.
Sure.
I don't know how simple we need it, but yeah, a simple GUI is pretty straightforward. Because I seem to have control now.
Yep.
To start, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay. A little latency, but still. I'd say one of the ones that would be pretty simple is, let's say you just go with the GUI command, GUI, and then you want to add any type of control. And controls are what you see within a GUI. Any of the buttons that you see here up here is a control. Any of the menu points, any of the place where you type in the text, that's a text control, and so on and so forth. So by adding a simple thing like add text, this will add in, what do we call it, an uneditable text control. So here, now I've added GUI, add text, and after this last comma, I have the options of controlling the size of that control, maybe not the font, but still different types of what the control actually does. This I can control here. Let's say I want it to be a specific width. So here I'll say it needs to be, okay, I lost control there.
Sorry.
Okay, so width 200. This is in pixels, screen pixels. So this is a width of 200 screen pixels. I'm not going to control the height. It already has a standard height for a text control. And here after this comma, I can then add in whatever text I want there to be in here. And this could be any type of input, some text in the edit control. Interesting. Control, like so. And if I then go down one line and put in a new GUI, and I add one more control, and this time I add an edit control. This one, what should the width of that one be? It could be 200. Oh, can't have a space there. Could be 200 as well. Now I'll actually have something that comes first, and then it puts a control after it. This one will be an edit control. So inputting something here would be like a placeholder text. Let's say your name, just to input something. And to kind of give me some kind of thing to click, I could say GUI, add, and button. So I'll add a button. Oh, sorry. And again, I could control the height. The height of this one, I want that to be 50 pixels, 550 pixels high. I don't want to control the actual width of it. It will come out in an okay size. And I want it to say, no, let it just say okay, like so. And now I have built in 3 different controls within my GUI. But if I now save this and load it or launch it, you wouldn't see anything because I haven't actually shown the GUI to you. So the next part of this would be GUI, comma, show, like so. And now, if I save this and ran it, you would be able to see these. So let's do that. I'll start with that.
Either comment outline to or move to beneath the thing, because it's not going to get to it, right?
I'm unsure where you are at.
Line 2.
What part of it will not get to?
I have a hotkey there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Let's. Oh, I couldn't use that. Sure. I'm so used to actually using that key on my keyboard to do that. Fair enough. Save that. The reason I had to comment out this is that it's actually the way that AutoHotkey works. It reads from the top until it reaches either a hotkey definition or a return. So if this had been there, the script would have only read single instance force, and then it would have stopped here on the browser forward key. So by removing that, it will actually keep on reading these next 4 lines. So here you can see that didn't really look all that great because I didn't actually use that much control on what I wanted to do, but it's a simple GUI. You could control this even more. Now you've seen the first layout of it. If I instead wanted this edit control to come after the text, so they were on the same line, I could do that by, and I need to remember the X previous, that would put it at the exact same spot on the x-axis as the previous control. If I instead did it on the y-axis, this would now put it on the same spot as the previous control's y-axis. So if I go in here, save, and did it actually take that, or am I lacking? As you can see here, now you only see the edit because it's at the exact same spot as the previous control. So because I actually didn't tell it where to put it on the x-axis, I could say here x plus some kind of amount of pixels, like the x of the previous control plus 10. Let's see that. So here you all of a sudden you have input some text in the edit control, and then you have a lot of white space here. That's because from the start of this to the end of it, there are 200 pixels. So
right,
that you have the extra width there. If I instead remove this, it would make the text control just be the length of the actual text of it here. Okay, I need to move my mouse slower. So let's show that. Is it really so slow?
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. But
okay,
yeah.
So here you can now say all of the extra white space in there has been shrunk down to it coming right after. So now I have input some text in the edit control and then the edit box right after it.
Yeah, and then he could easily add something to capture once you hit OK to capture what was typed in under your name, and then use that elsewhere in your script.
Yeah, exactly. Just to put that in quickly, I could on this edit control, I would want somewhere to actually store whatever the user put into it. I would use the V, and then I would name, let's say I have variable, holding name. This could be any kind of variable name you used here. Now I just used variable holding name. It could just have been var, let's say var1, just to kind of call it something. So
the important thing to remember is that first V, it's a trigger kind of thing. It doesn't get used in the actual name of your variable.
No, it's like the Y here and the X over here and the W there. This V is doing exactly the same thing. It's telling the AutoHotkey interpreter what the next part of this parameter here is. So it tells it that this is a variable name. That's small v there.
Real quickly, just because I don't want them to think we're not listening, but Brommer, yeah, you can use AutoHotkey for that. Well, I'll circle back there in a couple minutes. Let's let Jackie finish up in this.
Yeah. So now I have a variable to hold your name. This OK button, I actually also want to control the width of it, like so. So now I have both the height and the width. So now it will be squared. I have the GUI here. If I wanted to put in some kind of GUI name, I could do that. I could call it your input. Funny. Your input GUI, just to call it something. And then to make sure that the script waits for the user to actually input something, I'll put in a return here. This will stop the script from executing any further. So now it will go down, read the 3 controls, and show them to the user. So now the script won't do anything more until you either press the control B that's down here, or until any kind of other label that's active in your script is activated by hotkey or any kind of other action. And the thing I wanted to do here was that on a button like this, AutoHotkey automatically sets up a label on what did you call it and what type of button was it. But instead of, let's say, going in here and saying OK button and then making a label, I will want to make it a specific name. I can do that with a G for what's called a G label, a GUI point, a GUI label. So a G, and I'll call it OK, just to keep it simple. And now I'll go in here and I'll make a label that's called OK and end it with a single colon. Not a double colon like you would do on a hotkey, but the thing that happens now is, I'll put in a second return here, is that when the OK button is clicked on the GUI, it will actually call upon this spot in the script. So what we can do under here is, as soon as the user clicks OK, we want this GUI up here to submit all of its data. So I'll use the GUI, comma, submit command. Now what happens is, as soon as the user clicks OK, the GUI will submit its data to AutoHotkey or to the script. And now it actually means that I can show what the GUI put in this variable 1. So if I use a message box, like so, and use the variable var1 here, it will show whatever was input into this edit control when the OK button was clicked. So let's do that now. So input some text into the edit control, and your name could be, as it's me, Jackie, and I'll click the OK button. And you can see here, I immediately got a message box that hold whatever I typed into that field. I think that's a simple GUI, right?
Absolutely. The one thing I was going to say is, why don't you comment out those lines 5 through 8? Or whatever. Actually, don't even do that. Just on line 3, put in an input box instead, just to demonstrate how easy it could have been if you don't have a complex, you know.
It's weird that it's not actually showing the parameters because I can't exactly remember them. We might need to reload ZA with the AutoHotkey setting as the syntax, but still, I do believe something like.
Here, you know what? Let's do this. Let's hold on. Let's use Studio
for the input box.
Sure enough. Here you go.
Yeah. So and okay, you had control there. Input box. I'll take that one and I'll put in. As you can see here, you'll get the same kind of thing in ZA with the input box, and then what's the first parameter? The first parameter is the name of the variable I want the content to be outputted to. So output var. Here I'll put in var. I'll use 2 just to do something different. And if I want the input box that this command will create for me, it's a simple small GUI with the same kind of controls that I just showed us. I can give that a control. This could again be your input GUI, just to call it again something. And continuing on here, what do I actually want the user to do? What do I prompt them to do? And here is input some text in the edit control, just to type out the exact same thing. And putting in a comma will again, at least in Studio, I'm not sure that ZA is that well at actually keeping track of the commas, but it's still there. If I wanted whatever to be hidden after an amount of time, I could use the hide here. But if I wanted to control the width, I could put that into this parameter, or the height, I could put that into this one. And if I wanted to control where on the screen it was shown, I could use the X parameter and the Y parameter, and so on and so forth. But up until I get to the end one, the one that has the default, I can then put in the placeholder text, your name, just like we had in the other one. So now you can see all of these empty commas here. Those are to tell the command, and I don't have anything to hide. I don't have any input on the width or on the height or on the placement on the screen. And I don't want it to use a specific font, and I don't want it to time out. So just keeping those blank. But I do want a placeholder text there. And then I'll here, let's say, message box. Again, I could control or I could check for input into the variable or other things, whatever people did with the input box. But for this one, I'll just show what's in var2. And then I'll make sure that the script doesn't actually continue on.
Just hit Alt-R.
Yeah, I could do that. I can also go in here and then run selected text, whatever. But yeah, Alt-R. Oh, sorry, that didn't actually go through correctly. Here you have the GUI that AutoHotkey makes when you use the input box, like this one. You will actually see, oh, I need to, like here. Then it looks like this. The text up here, what I prompted the user, it is automatically placed there, and the input field is automatically placed here. An OK button and a cancel button is also automatically in this small window here, just by simply using the word input box. This is a very, very simple way of getting a user's input. It has the limitation of you can only take one input. There's only a single edit control here. You could put in multiple lines and have yourself or the user input one thing in the first one and then pressing OK, and then the next thing in the next one, and so on. But yeah, that's how simple that could be. I'll again put in my own name here and press the OK, and you'll see that we get the message box with the contents of var2 here. Yeah.
And so let me back up, because Susan was nice enough to mention just how much she's using AutoHotkey at work, and it went from 50 items completed a day to hundreds to sometimes thousands. That's awesome. I was the same way when I was working in corporate world, and it was just amazing. But I saw this other question about some Excel comments are really large, and that it's difficult to find. I mean, Excel will find the string, but it's still, I understand what you're saying, is like it's still hard to see where it is being highlighted. You could definitely have an AutoHotkey script automatically tell you like if you wanted the cell contents, sorry, the cell, not coordinates, what's the right range or whatever, right? It's in cell D97, right? Do something like that. But there's a lot you can do with AutoHotkey and the COM object of Excel. It's a little, some time up front to understand some stuff, but on my site I have I'd say around a dozen videos walking through using Excel, and I have a library I list there too of functions. And once you start getting the hang of it, it's not that hard. But I've definitely done some searching using the search. I think you can search comments. I'm sure you can, and have it tell you what you want. Right? It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said again, Joe, if you wanted to do something very specific in Excel, like follow along with where is the find command or whatever, and where on the screen has it actually located something, and yeah, sure, can be actually hard to see which small part of a big, large chunk of text is actually the one currently found. But yeah, you could probably do it. I haven't done that exact thing, but yeah, I'm already thinking of a few different ways you could do it. So,
and the great thing about Excel is that hey, if you can turn on the macro recorder inside Excel and then run what you're doing and then go look at the VBA code that was used to do what you did. And then usually adopting that to AutoHotkey is pretty straightforward. Once you get the hang of it, it's really easy.
Yeah, it was one of the effects I at least talked about at one point also, that AutoHotkey hasn't actually had some kind of user make some kind of Excel library that's the library over all libraries that is using some kind of technique that he thought up. No, instead, the actual programmer of AutoHotkey chose to implement a specific way of doing COM that resembles the way that the original programmers did it. So the way AutoHotkey does it looks exactly how you would do it in, let's see, C++ or in maybe not C++, but then C Square or VBA or some of these other things that are Windows inclined. And so yeah, I do really love that you can almost copy paste code from other Windows languages into AutoHotkey, and it would seem to work.
Yeah,
within the COM space. Yeah.
Yeah. This is and it's on my website, but this is the Excel function library that I built. The vast majority of it works. Some of it I haven't actually gone back and tested, but it's in different stages. When I was first learning stuff, I didn't know object-oriented stuff, and so I figured out what I now think of as workarounds. I mean, it worked, but it wasn't the object-oriented way of doing things, but they still work. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff for doing things in Excel, and I know I had for searching and so I did that for searching, and this will search and find the spot itself, but when you do that, you know exactly what cell you're in, right? So just the finding of it, and then you could probably report the coordinates is probably the easiest thing I would think of, or maybe have it, if you wanted, color code, the cell, the shading or something, if you don't care, or maybe flash change the shading for 5 seconds and then leave it back to the color it was, right? Something like that might be nice.
Yeah. Again, probably pretty many ways to do it. And let's say it was in Excel, or it was in Outlook, or it was in Word. There's probably pretty much. There's probably a lot of ways that you could do it, depending on your mindset for what it is that. Let's say you have something that's selected, and as you said yourself, having a cell actually flash, or some stuff will actually be able to return a screen coordinate to you, like where the actual cursor on the screen, and then you can make whatever happen there, flash or hold down Control maybe, as there's these built-in commands in Windows that will actually make it having these rippling rings around wherever the cursor is and stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this stuff. I'm just reading the chat. I don't know if you're doing the same, Joe, but you probably are. But just instead of having this, that are Excel and COM in general is one of the areas that both Joe and me have actually talked at length about.
Yeah, and we have a webinar
read, Joe?
Specific on Excel, and then I have a lot of tutorials on it. But yeah, I get what you're saying is that it only shows the comment of the cell containing the string, but not the cursor within the comment. So what I would even consider doing is you could have Excel find the comment, and then in a AutoHotkey, bigger GUI, display the full comment. You make it easier to read, maybe, or dump it into something else and then color code where that word was that you were looking for, right? Something like that. Although I don't know if you have to. Go ahead, Jackie.
I haven't actually worked that much in comments in Excel, but yeah, those are kind of a weird thing. I know that I had a question I was helping someone with on comments way back when, and these comments that are this small uh, triangular thing on the cell that shows that that cell has a comment. It, as he's saying here, it might show you which cell has the comment that you're searching, but it will actually not go into the comments text and do anything. No color coding, no nothing. You don't really have any type of rich edit there. So I don't believe you can do much more than get to know that a cell has the right comment. And then, as you said, you could probably programmatically with COM or whatever, take the content of the comment, take it out into a variable in AutoHotkey, learn where the thing that you're searching for is, and then move the actual viewpoint to that exact spot.
Well, or yeah, just moving the cursor, right? You could
yeah,
probably leave the cursor in the right spot. This, I do remember in here when you're inserting a comment, but to Jackie's point, the object dealing with comments is not like the typical other things. And I played with it some, but it was like this text frame characters. Like it's this, anyway, it does have its own object and dealing with stuff with it.
Yeah, he's saying the same thing at the end here. Sometimes I copy the comment to Notepad and use Notepad's find function, and you could do that in the background with AutoHotkey, simply copying all of the comments content into a variable in AutoHotkey. Use AutoHotkey's search functionality to actually find it, and then tell you either in Word or in whatever message box or whatnot, how far in whatever you're looking for is, either by, as we said, moving the cursor on screen, or by simply saying to you it's 16 words in, or however you want to get there.
Or take the text and dump it into an HTML file and then bold or change the color, right? Because you're just wrapping it with some simple comment tags, right, to where it is, and then run it in a browser, right, or an ActiveX document, and that would visually give you a nice cue, and it'd be easy. You can, it's funny because John and I were talking about it, I think last week, you can also deal with rich text formatting and stuff as well, but then it depends on what editor or what you're doing it in, right? So that's what it boils down to, is where are you going to host, where are you going to take the comment and put it, right? I think what did I mention earlier? ObjectX thing would be pretty easy to create and have it display it in a nice, easy formatting way for you.
Yeah.
Site actually has a COM object, by the way, though, and so you can programmatically connect with it as well. I'm not sure if you could. Yeah, you might be able to add it to a special word list, and then that would change the color of it or something, but I wouldn't necessarily use it for that.
No, but again, you could probably just, if the interesting part would be to just copy out the comment, put it in whatever would make it most visually appealing to him to find where it was, and put it in there. That's you could do pretty much whatever you could think up. It's just a matter of typing out.
Well, actually, and let's get back into it, like depending on what you were trying to do with it, you could also use a regular expression to say, hey, go find where that comment is, and then take everything for the next 2 paragraphs and extract it from the bigger comment, so I can, if you happen to know how much of the text you want, that's a great example of where a regular expression is pretty easy to use in doing that.
Yeah, that's exactly, because again, the end goal might actually make it much simpler to do all of the stuff instead of trying to show where in the comment what is. if he already knows what he has to do at that spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's where it suddenly, often when you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, I need this text and everything up until the next, end of the paragraph or period, or just still grab it. I can strip everything before it often, would be my guess, right? But I need the stuff after it. And so at least drop out the stuff before it and start there, and then make your quick decision of where do you want to cut it, and grab it from there, right? Once you start getting the hang of it, you really, especially with regular expressions, and there's other easier ways to do it too when it's really simple, but you can do some amazing stuff and realize you can make your job so much easier by controlling the environment and what you're seeing. Jackie, I remember you had a post, I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, it was something like making a game out of reading your emails, right? And like they would pop up and you could hit a button up or down and it would either delete it or not delete it or something, but you could go through your email so much faster by making a game of it.
Yeah, exactly. It was this, I can't even remember what I called it anymore, but yeah, it was quite a good insight. I had fun doing it, but yeah, you could do that with lots of stuff. But yeah, one of the things was with emails. I just kept getting so many emails, so I had to do something to kind of get to inbox zero, as they'd call it. Yeah. And again, a simple hotkey would either delete it or send it to whatever folder I had, instead of me actually having to sit there and drag and drop and all of that stuff. And I ended up really having these buzzwords inside the email's content to just immediately filter them for specific folders. So yeah, you can do some amazing stuff.
So, by the way, earlier I didn't have my hot strings available, so I couldn't easily demonstrate it. Let me show you. If I type TST period, so this is my default when I start playing with stuff, right? I have this just in case I want it, but let me launch it. Oh, I hit the wrong hotkey. All right. So, what's input box requires?
The input box further down wasn't actually completed. Yeah.
So now when I hit my hotkey, it's going to read this file, and it's going to store it in variable, and then it's going to dump it into this function I have, which happens to be, this is an AutoHotkey GUI that I made that also it's resizable, right? But it just read that file's content that we were looking at over here, right? It read it and brought it into here, and this is where we were saying, like, you could read, you could read in, find it in Excel, bring the content in as a variable, strip out everything, let's say to the left or whatever that you don't want from it, and then show it in something and still be able to copy what you want, come in here and manipulate it, right? But it's super easy to do. And my function, it's a little more complicated, but like I have parameters in here where I can control the height or width, but I don't have to. This is one of the reasons why I like Studio over AutoHotkey is, and Jackie demonstrated it earlier, is the it auto shows you where you are in your function, what parameters are available. It looks like it's not updating. Yeah, for some reason it's not updating right at the moment. But anyway, in most things it'll show you what parameters are about, even if it's your own function.
Yeah.
Maybe. So yeah, but hopefully that helps answer your question. It's just, you definitely can do what you're saying. I would just say is I bet you with a little bit of thinking that you might actually really come up with a solution that really optimizes what you're doing, to even make it so much easier. It's fun, right? That's the beauty of AutoHotkey.
Yeah, of course, it's easier to talk to specific solutions if you actually know the entire problem here. Of course, he's using some kind of way to find the correct cell that has the comment that he's looking for. And whatever needs to happen to that comment is, at the moment, he needs to find whatever it was that he was looking for inside the comment. But if he actually needs to change that word or if he needs to change the wording. There can be a lot of different stuff that you could do, but you could easily pull out all of the content of the comment into something else, or just keep it inside a variable in AutoHotkey, do all of the needed changes if those are doable without a human, and then just paste it back into the comment. So you wouldn't actually have to do any searching within the comments text if that wasn't needed.
Right. Was there any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions? Of course, start by going with what you already have now and build that small functionality onto it, and then extend it at some point when you feel more comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's the other thing we highly recommend is you don't try to solve everything all at once, right? Baby step into it, get it to do what you need it to do, and then over time think about, you know what else it could do? It could do this other thing, right? Especially like if that file location stays the same, or you wanted to read, if you could type out all of the things, or if you had them in a list, like where are you getting the things you're looking for, right? If that comes to you from a list, your program can go get that list of the search terms, and that way you have those all together, and then run your program, and it goes and finds it, and then pauses until you do what you want, and then you just hit next, and it goes and takes that next word, the term you're looking for, and does the search for you and does the whole process for you, right? Batching them all together.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I with what you just said there, so like this is where I would consider you could do it if it's that simple. If it's two different things, you might have two different hotkeys that you can trigger depending on which one. If you're just trying to find to see if it's there, right? Or maybe you build into it, say, well, if it's there, it's gonna have a GUI that shows me this, but it also does it. But you could, what I was thinking is you could create a GUI to launch each of which one you want to do. Like there are things in AutoHotkey called a list view that are really nice because they display a list of texts, and you can click them, you can do what you want with them, but then it could go and run the search for you, and it makes it really, and it is, it starts getting a little bit advanced, but you don't just baby step into it, right? Don't try and do it all at once. And list views are amazing. They're so useful, but you don't have to start off with that.
Yeah, I do remember when I started out, if we take the example that you showed at the beginning where you would copy something, then you would activate a window and then you would paste it in. I actually started by having multiple hotkeys do that. So I would have one that would store the clipboard into a variable, and then I would have another that would again store the clipboard into another variable, and by that making a multi-clipboard kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I would have a third hotkey that would actually activate Excel for me, so I didn't have to sit there and move the mouse to activate Excel or press Alt Tab or whatnot. And then I would have a third one that would copy or paste it in and go down one field and then paste the other one in, and then reload the page. So it would actually have 3 hotkeys to do the tasks that you had here, or 4 maybe. And then over time, I found out, okay, it's really good at doing this window switching. Why do I actually have an extra hotkey there?
Yeah.
And I would remove it. And then the first one that copied the 2 things would then end up also switching the windows.
Yeah.
And when that worked quite well, I then incorporated the last one that would paste the stuff into the needed fields. So I had it baby step. So I actually
you compartmentalized them. Yeah,
exactly. I did all of the tasks, but instead of doing all of the tasks in sequential order, I had myself interact on the in different spots, and over time it became this one thing that would do everything in seconds.
Well, and even to Jackie's point, which that's a great approach, and I do that a lot too. But even if you had just put in them all in one, yet had put a message box just to pause the script before it did the next part, right? You probably could have had them in one, and then, it got to a certain point where then you're like, okay, now I'm ready for the next step. Okay, and I just hit okay, right? And then it moves to the next step, and then when it finishes, it stops and hits until you hit okay again, and then moves to the next step. The other thing I thought of was, which I had meant to bring this up in earlier, was, hey, when this Control B that we wrote earlier to copy the clipboard and put it into Excel, when we do that, we're losing what's in the clipboard, right? So I don't like, if I had something in the clipboard I previously wanted, I'd love to be able to keep that there. So let's just say, let's call this backup. And I'm going to put clipboard all, which there's different levels of the clipboard as far as what content is it. Just clipboard alone, I think it's just like plain text. I'm not sure exactly on that, but clipboard all stores everything. And so I'm going to first store that. And then after here, I'm going to well, it's got the sleep above, so it's fine. So I'm going to say clipboard equals backup, right? So this way, if I initially had something on my clipboard before I did this process, it would stay in memory. So I don't lose what was there.
Yeah, that could be an image, that could be a URL, it could be whatever, username, whatnot. Whatever you could have on the clipboard that you thought, hey, that's nice to keep there. But I just quickly need to put this thing I found here into Excel. So now you can always copy something to Excel, but without actually clearing whatever you had for whatever action you were doing on the clipboard in the first place.
Yeah, it's just a nice, it is funny, it took me quite a while until that popped in my head, but then I'm like, why don't I just back up the clipboard and then restore it when I'm done? And then it never, I never lost what was actually there. It's really nice.
Yeah.
But again, that was just baby step into it, right? Find out what you're actually trying to do, and then slowly over time add to it. As especially like with, I'm sure when Susan first started, she didn't start off writing one script and automating thousands of things, right? No. You automate one little bit, and that starts freeing up some time to where you have more time to automate some more, and then that frees up more time, and then you don't tell your boss and you just sleep in. Now, you can really save an amazing amount of time. I did this a lot and saved a ton of time. Did anybody else have any other questions or anything, or any just even topically wondering if there's something that can be done or anything? Does everyone want to go out for Christmas and they're just done?
That's also fair. Everybody is entitled to some time off.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So, well, even then, Susan, for me, it's just amazing. Once you start getting into it, the more over time, you work with it, suddenly you look back, like that Excel function class library I have, I just over time realized, like, oh wow, I should rewrite this to do so much better. Often I don't rewrite things though. If it works, I just leave it. But over time you suddenly start thinking of other things that you could incorporate into it. Like my screen clipping tool, like this tool, I can be in anywhere. Where's my mouse? And I can drag a little thing, and this is, these are our little clips of this. I can scroll around. It doesn't matter. They stay on top. When I'm done, I can just click it. But if I do, let me see my home page here. I think we'll have like Survey Gizmo. So this is an image, right? So I'm going to highlight it here. But let's say that was actually like a paragraph of text I wanted. If I click this and hit Control T, I borrowed this from Jackie had done. It will do its best to perform OCR. And so see here now it says Survey Gizmo is on my clipboard now. So it performed OCR on what was on that clipboard, and I can now paste this. So if that was actually a block of text that was in an image or anywhere, right? Even if it's on a web page where I can't highlight the text, I can highlight it and hit a button, and bam, I get the text from it, which is mostly accurate. It's been pretty darn good. But that was one where at first I just had it doing this. And then I said, oh, you know what? Sometimes I want to email that to somebody. Actually, my Outlook's not open. Let me open it. And then I said, let me make it where it uploads it to Imager. And then I said, well, let me add it to where I can automate it where it'll write my email for me. And so that just took those images, saved it both as a BMP and a JPEG, and then wrote this email to come from me at a pretty nice email that I can then send to somebody. But if we look, that's the image that I just grabbed, right? But I just slowly kept adding to it, and then that OCR was the final one that after in the middle of the webinar when Jackie was teaching us this stuff on OCR, I'm like, oh my God, I can add that to my screen clipping tool and then have it built in like that, right? I can easily start doing OCR. So, yeah, baby steps.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will work on getting this stuff out tonight. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all. Hope you guys all have a great Christmas, holidays, breaks, whatever, New Year. We'll see you next.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. We have. I don't think we have a topic for next month's webinar yet, but we'll figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone.
Yeah.
Have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye.